Recently, I finished watching the show FLCL Progressive. It's a sequel series set in the same universe as the 2003 cult classic anime, often simply called FLCL. I had plenty of reservations about the sequel show going in, but the entire time I was watching, I kept asking myself, was FLCL always like this? The 2018 show and the 2003 original have a number of things in common, of course, but the differences seem stark. I think part of the reason for this is that I haven't watched the original show in several years. So, I went back and watched the show that I first watched 15 years ago this year, and unsurprisingly, something was different this time around. It wasn't that FLCL used a square aspect ratio. It wasn't the show's animation style, which, for the record, I think is nearly timeless, and it certainly wasn't the awesome Pillows soundtrack. Those things were all the same. It was me. I have changed. The phallic imagery common in the show seemed blunt and uninteresting. The fan service elements mostly strike me as unnecessary now, and most of all, I simply didn't care as much about the exaggerated struggles of entering adolescence. For one simple reason, I think. I'm past that phase in life. Now, when I watch the show, I pay a lot more attention to the people around Naota Nandaba, the main character. There are several adults in FLCL, many of which are in prime positions to positively influence the young, impressionable Naota for the better. For a variety of reasons, none of those adults end up doing so, but instead of saying why that is just a second, I'll let Naota say it for me. In the world of FLCL,
adults are really stupid.
let's start by taking a look at Naota's dad. Kamo Nandaba is hardly what I would call an inspiration. He abandoned a middling small business to start producing a less than successful personal gossip magazine about local celebrities. What really bothers me about him, though, is how he reacts to the discovery that Naota might be starting to become sexually active. In the frantic manga sequence from episode 1, he doesn't even seem that fazed by what Naota might be doing. Instead, he cares a whole lot more that Naota might be getting down and dirty with someone and he isn't. Now, I wasn't expecting some kind of calm, collected, full house moment, but that level of selfishness is off the charts. Kamon talks less like a father to his son and more like a male competitor to his rival in the dating pool. He even goes so far as to challenge Naota to an armed duel for Haruko's romantic attention. Outside of a brief span where he was replaced with a robot, all Kamon does is try to get physical with Haruko despite the calamity, the absolute madness going on in his own son's life. Of course, anime dads would rarely win any awards for parenting. You probably know who I'm talking about, but typically, and even in those spaces, there are other characters who step in to fill that role. In the case of FLCL, I turn to Commander Amaral of the Interstellar Immigration Bureau as a sort of surrogate parental figure for Naota. He explicitly warns Naota against getting involved with Haruko, but unlike Kamo Nandaba, the commander actually does give some pretty sound reasoning. He basically tells Naota that Haruko is dangerous. She's an intergalactic criminal who's only after one thing and doesn't care who or what she has to rip through to get to it. Honestly, all of the commander's warnings to Naota sound pretty spot on, even if they're all cryptically delivered. I had high hopes for him as an adult figure for a little while, anyway. Eventually, it's revealed that he doesn't necessarily want to stop Naota getting further involved with Haruko to save this kid from the inevitable pain of that relationship. Perversely, Amaral just wishes that it was him Haruko was so invested in and not Naota. Jealousy, masked by a sense of duty, drives his actions to disappointing effect. In terms of the adult women present in the show, very few come into direct contact with Naota. But before talking about the obvious character of Haruko, I want to take a quick look at another woman that I feel is often overlooked in discussions of this show, Naota's 6th grade teacher. Junko Miyagi is, in my mind, without a doubt, the most laughable character in FLCL. Despite being a regular fixture in many of the school kids' lives, she is often ignored, left screaming off to the side for anyone's attention. At worst, she shows herself to still be infantile herself, with her childlike hairstyle and inability to even hold chopsticks correctly. These characteristics don't necessarily make Junko that particularly interesting. However, when these same traits are examined within a Japanese context, they seem like a scathing characterization. Unlike other parts of the world where teachers can be criminally underserved, in Japan, a teacher is a deathly serious authority figure. Within that culture, teachers are expected to be listened to and obeyed, not run over with alien machinery. The fact that Naoto's school teacher is so terribly inept is a huge statement the show is making, not only about government-mandated education, but all of adulthood in that world. Junko, a woman put in charge of an entire class of youth, is no better than a child herself. With no real direction coming from his home life or his school life, it's no wonder that Naoto leans so heavily into his budding relationship with Haruko Haruhara. Whew, that's a name. She comes crashing into Naoto's life like a Vespa-shaped wrecking ball, and from that moment on is solely invested in him. When I was younger, I found everything Haruko did over the course of the show somewhat random. I never really knew what she was after or what she would do next, which was kind of exciting, but upon my latest viewing, everything seems way clearer. Haruko has only one goal throughout the entire show, and that's to capture the object of her desire, Adamisk. Everything she does is in pursuit of that one directive. She runs over Naoto with her Vespa, moves in with him and his family, puts the entire town at risk from a falling satellite she herself brought down, replaces Naoto's father with a robot that would get under Naoto's skin, and, okay, among several other things, never outright rejects the romantic feelings she must know are building within the main character. I was always so caught up in Naoto's reactions to all of the ridiculous things going on around him that I never saw just how much of it was completely orchestrated by Haruko with the explicit purpose of manipulating him. Watching this show now, the whole relationship seems kind of sad, until I realized that Naoto and Haruko are far more similar than they are different. They're both after something they know somewhere deep down they can't have. Naoto must know that Haruko is well above his level romantically, just as well as Haruko must know Adamisk is well beyond her own standing in the universe. Somehow, this knowledge only pushes both of these characters further into their obsessions, despite the clear dangers of doing so. Naoto even gives up what is essentially a galactic god power, just to shoot his shot with Haruko one solid time in the anime's 6th episode. Despite her age, Haruko is yet another adult that acts nothing like one. She's childish, manipulative, and boorish about pursuing only what she wants, even at the risk of everyone in her proximity. FLCL is such a different show to me now that I'm more of an adult myself. As a teenager of about the same age as Naoto, I thoroughly invested my attention into his actions and his character when I first watched the show 15 years ago. I never really took the time to examine anyone else. Now, when I rewatch the show, I see all of the craziness going on and immediately search for some kind of adult voice of reason beyond the main character's journey. Unfortunately, I realize that none of the adults within the limited world of FLCL are in a position to be that voice. In fact, most of them act like children themselves. The only difference is, some kids are bigger than others.